2. Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. We are Memorial Day was this week. Plus, Dustin turns a certain age number tomorrow. So happy birthday, Dustin.
He's not a woman. You can say it.
Yeah, I don't remember what it is.
What was that about? I don't want to give him away, my brother, who you can look up on Facebook.
I would just have to do math. 33.
33.
33, yeah. So
I
didn't know.
Too. Oh. Dustin was hoping one of us was going to say it. It looked like.
Wait, I thought you were turning 34.
33.
No. You get to a point. And what about me?
Also, you're turning 36 this year, right?
Yeah. In November. Yep. Yeah. So
I've enjoyed watching Cody figure this out.
Yeah, he's buffering. I saw the circle pop up in the middle of his forehead.
It's not. It's not exactly 2-2-2-2, Dustin or Cody. I mean,
Cody, it's because we're in a different time zone.
Okay, well, my brain, the way you're saying it means. So if you're 32 now, you're turning 33. It means you're gonna be.
And next year I'll be 34.
on the same day too.
So it's actually 3.5 this month. Then
tune into our podcast when we teach Cody the shapes and colors.
No, Scott is 2.5 years older than me, meaning for half the year he's 2 years, and the other half the year he's 3 years.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The rest of us.
Guys, we got to talk about sports, or Cody's brains are going to fall out of his head.
Go on, move on.
Okay. So, anyway, happy birthday, Dustin, tomorrow, and we're gonna talk about quite a few things today. But first, we're turning it over to Yancey for a segment.
I'm super excited to watch a fight with you guys. I don't think we've ever watched a fight together. And even though we're only going to get to watch a clip of this, I'm excited to go over it and to just kind of gauge the reaction and see what you guys thought of this moment in history in MMA. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of women's MMA. I don't like watching women get beat up, even if it's another chick doing it. It's just a thing inside of me. But I did enjoy watching this chick in the black shorts getting kicked in the face. Ronda Rousey, she was really good and was dominating chicks, submitting girls. At this point, her average fight time was 34 seconds. Her average fight time was 34 seconds. Okay, that's incredible, and it hasn't been repeated yet to where someone would go in there, armbar their opponent, and walk out with a check. She was able to do that, but I knew before this fight happened that if you put a kickboxer in there, that was all going to stop, and Ronda Rousey was going to have to do something else. And that was right. She went and fake wrestled with people in the WWE 3 fights after this had occurred. So let's go ahead and let's watch the end of Ronda, the beginning of the end with Ronda Rousey here.
So we're going to watch 45 seconds of this straight through, and then we can go back and diagnose or analyze some of the things. So
yeah, sounds good.
Taking her head off the center line, and her face is getting lit up.
At least Daniel Cormier is not talking.
You cannot again.
Let's try to let that buffer.
Yeah.
Cannot get the experience on your feet like Holly had.
Sorry about that.
I didn't expect that either. So let's try to go back here. Maybe I'll try this.
Geez, you would think you asked Cody how old his brother was.
Of course.
Sorry, I have to give you stuff for that, bro. That was
sorry, guys.
We don't endorse this guy or care if you buy his stuff, by the way.
Colorado, but you don't even know.
Wow, no touch.
Oh my gosh, it's not liking it at all.
Something I did want to point out, though, is that Ronda Rousey did not touch gloves at the beginning of the fight, which is almost, it's not something you have to do, but it's kind of a traditional show of respect for your opponent.
I know about that too. Yeah. Let's see if it'll play.
Lit up right now.
But you cannot,
Again.
you cannot get the experience on your feet like
Play my bad.
Holly has, and she's showing it here.
Ronda
Again
in
with a big shot.
She's getting lit up, Mike.
Ducking.
Wow.
Whoop.
This is incredible.
Never have we seen this. But this is boxer, kickboxer,
Straight
turned
left.
mixed martial art. This Ronda judoka turned mixed martial artist.
Beautiful.
Can she
Beautiful. She's hurt.
is in trouble.
She's hurt.
Holly looking to finish. He's out. Holly Holm is the new UFC bantamweight champion of the world.
Oh my God.
Okay. It must have been. I mean, when I watched this earlier on the laptop, it did fine, but it must be that I'm streaming at the same time and doesn't like it. But we got through it. I assume all of us watched it on our own as well, but we can go back and look at some of these things. But go ahead, Yancey. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So just a couple of things I wanted to point out. We couldn't really see it on the video, so I don't want to put anybody through trying to watch that twice. But when she lands the first punch, the first series of strikes after Ronda had completely whiffed that punch, and Holm ducks underneath, and Ronda ends up against the cage with her back up against the cage because she completely missed that punch. That was basically the beginning of the end there. And almost any striker, this is the punch she ducks. So this is basically the beginning of the end because you're getting the opponent to throw strikes that are nowhere near landing, and you're putting them in such a disadvantageous position that you can do what you want. And that's what she did from that moment in the fight on. And so what I was going to point out after watching it is she was able to keep the range, and Ronda had no idea how close they were to each other or how far away they were with each other. And that's why she was eating those shots so big, and the reaction on her face was so big. Because those shots hurt, and she didn't think she was going to get hit with them, and that's what was ultimately causing her to just get tagged up so much. And her coach before the fight was talking about how she'd been beating up guys and like outboxing professional boxers, and it was simply bogus. It was just a lie, and he basically bolstered her head too big and got her punched out because she thought she was going to be able to do something that didn't fit in her skill set, and so she started training away from her skill set, and that's what got her devastated in that fight. And then also, after Holly rocked her, the patience to wait for her to stand up and then shove her back to turn that left head kick is incredible. Cody, you wrestled, so you know the adrenaline involved of like, oh, this is my moment. I see this moment. I have to physically get on top of this dude now if I'm going to get this pin or this half Nelson or whatever it is you're setting up. And for her to wait, let her stand up, present a target, and then kick it was just incredible patience and timing on Holly Holm's part. And I thought it was just a head kick you don't see very often. Usually when fighters turn their backs, you'll kind of give them mercy for whatever reason. But that's the best time to kick somebody if you're talking about wanting to knock them out, is when they're not looking at you. And if we're in a professional fight, you should know not to put your back to me.
Yeah, I can go next on this. First off, in my opinion, wrestling and fighting is probably the toughest sport out there. It takes so much energy out of you in such a quick amount of time. And then plus having to try to refocus and basically just gather yourself together after you're taking hits to the face. It's extremely difficult. Obviously, Ronda Rousey is really the only name in women's UFC I know. And so I see this is the fight we're going to watch. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to see how good Ronda Rousey is. That was my thought process. I've never heard of Holly Holm before, but what the thing I thought was interesting is Ronda's strategy. As you could tell, she was the aggressor. She was following her everywhere. She was the one pressing on the fight, while Holly was the one kind of like playing defense. Come at me, and then I'll take a strike as you're making the move at me. And that was kind of what helped Holly, I think, the most is you come into my territory, and then that's how I'm going to get you, rather than me going into your territory. It was pretty impressive. I definitely, I last maybe 1 second against either of those, so not even that probably. But it was really impressive. It was pretty fun to see Ronda get knocked out. Was she actually knocked out, or was she just kind of gathering herself, I guess?
No, she was out cold.
Out cold.
Yeah, when your arms go like you're riding a roller coaster, a doctor will tell you that's a sign of brain trauma. Like she locked up, she was out. The hammer fists weren't necessary. It's because of the way Ronda talked that she got those hammer fists. Like Holly could have kicked her in the face and walked off, and it would have been fine. She felt like hitting her, so she did. But Holly's actually a super nice human, and after the fight said, like, hey, I respect what Ronda did for the sport and everything. It was a bad matchup for her, and I'd be willing to do it again if she wanted to. And, like, tried to shake her hand after the fight, but Ronda was kind of snotty about it and didn't really want anything to do with it, but you get what's coming.
Yeah, I'm glad that you chose this memory, because I watched this fight. This is one of the times that I actually watched this fight, and so because I was excited about it. Ronda Rousey had been in several movies at this point; she was a big name, and so I watched this fight, and I thought it'd be exciting. And I remember seeing that head kick. It was like, wow, that was incredible. That was an incredible fight. Yeah, and this in particular, you can see how she completely lost her confidence after getting hit a couple times, right? That, like that Mike Tyson quote, just her plan on what to do was gone. It was out the window. And she didn't know what to do, and she got way too aggressive and trying to get the knockout blow, and Holly took advantage. And so this is an exciting fight. I remember watching it, and yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I wanted to point out a couple of things that I have the screen, and Yancey can comment too, since you know a lot more than I do about this. But I stopped at a perfect point to me, because it's hard to point out one moment in time here. But to me, Ronda Rousey is not confident right now.
No, look at her face.
Oh,
She looks.
yeah.
I see fear on that girl's face.
Mm-hmm.
It looks
Yeah.
like fear, because she knows what's coming. And look at the hand positioning of the two fighters. Ronda's hand is down here, away from her chin, in front of her chest, and the other one's down here like she's reaching for a pistol. There ain't no guns in there, sweetheart. Holly's hands are tight right here, making her elbows are tight and close together, and she's looking just over her gloves to where she can react and pull them up or down and throw strikes. Ronda's ill-prepared to take or give strikes in this position.
Move forward a little bit and hope that it does some stuff here. It's going.
And then in those two bounces, did you see the 3 bounces it took to get her hands back where they need to be to protect her face?
She's protecting it now too. Like she's in a very defensive position.
But do you see that box? That's a huge box compared to see the hands open for Holly. That's to present a fake target for Ronda to punch at, so she can come over the top with a quick jab. And you'll see that here in just a second, actually.
I turned off the audio, obviously.
And so you see how Holly's hands went from tight to open like she's a boxing coach? She did that because Ronda's technique told her in her mind to throw like a simple 1-2 punch when she saw pads instead of hands. And that led to her eating that punch. And look at you see what's happening now, that she ate that straight. And that wasn't even a very powerful punch. It was a well-placed, well-timed punch that Ronda didn't see coming.
Yeah, I noticed earlier she lost her mouth guard. I mean, she got punched so hard her mouth guard flew out, and they didn't stop that. They didn't. She tried to keep going. So I imagine that kick hit hurt especially hard without a mouth guard.
For sure, because when you can clinch down and you have that muscle in your jaw working, it makes it harder to knock you out. It's not impossible, but it's certainly harder if you can bite down on something to get knocked out than if you're loose mouth, breathing with your mouth open because her nose is broken at this point. It's a lot of factors, but I'm glad that you pointed that out, Dustin.
Yeah. Let's see if we can.
Wow. Jeez, and that's shin. Her ankle is sitting in the crook of her chin and her neck. If you go back a half a second, I don't know if we can get it, but it's basically textbook. Like, if I could tell you this is how I want to kick somebody, ideally, this would be in the top 3 ways to kick somebody in the face. The first one being they're on the ground and can't protect themselves. But you're just a monster.
Just it again.
Yep, that was it.
Let's just go back 1 second. It might be too much, but
I could literally watch this on freeze frame all day long. If they just had a loop of this, I'd put it on my Apple Watch or whatever.
Oh.
So, do you see? It's less foot and more ankle that's going into her neck and her face. And when that's happening, your foot slides and pushes off the chin as they're retreating from the kick, adding to the blow. And it's a perfect pause there, Scott. Shout out. Her face looks dented.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And let's just see the knockout. Oh, ouch. And she's out.
Yeah, and then Holly hits her 4 or 5 times after this.
Yeah,
but
that's right. She does.
Yeah, it's all because Herb Dean didn't get there fast enough. But that lady was unconscious when she was punching her, for sure. 100%.
All right. That was fun to go through that. And like Dustin, I don't think I watched this fight. I don't remember watching it at all, but I had known of Ronda Rousey mainly because she had started into mainstream films too, and so I was watching her and listening to some podcasts and Sports Center and highlights of the fights, and then to watch this, the one that everyone knows about, Ronda Rousey, literally kind of get her career over at this point. So
to her credit, women's MMA would not be where it is today without Ronda Rousey being the Conor McGregor of women's MMA, and being that she was boisterous and would, taunt her opponents and do things that I don't think really lend credit to the game, but she got other people to watch it and give money to fighters. And so I respect her for that alone. And I can't knock her for that. And you can't say she didn't build the sport up, because she certainly did. And she deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But personally, I don't like her. I don't like what she represents as a fighter. And if I were to show my daughters a fighter to learn from, it would not be her.
great segment, great video. Let me stop sharing so we can talk. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about a legend in the NBA who passed away this week. Dustin, do you want to take this segment?
Yeah. So Bill Walton passed away this past week. He was 71, died of cancer. An absolute legend in NBA history. He was on the NBA 75th anniversary team, which means so a couple years ago, 75th anniversary, bunch of analysts decided the 75 greatest players to ever pick up a basketball, Bill Walton being one of them. Right. So this is fantastic and a special group of people. I don't think that I'd be too wrong to say that Bill Walton is probably the greatest college basketball player of all time, bar none. He 2 NCAA championships, and I believe I looked at the letters. 7 different organizations named him Player of the Year 3 times in a row. 3 out of the 4 years, every single organization said he's the greatest player in college basketball. He played at UCLA, played for John Wooden, won 2 national titles there, and then went to the NBA and played about 10 years. Played in Portland, won a championship in Portland, won an MVP in Portland. But something that's unfortunate, but also really neat, is he spent so much of his career injured. He had terrible injuries, especially with his ankles. In fact, I was looking at some fun stats. There's only 3 seasons that he played more than 60 games in the season. He won a championship in 2 of those seasons. It's when he was healthy, his team won championships. It was incredible. And so just an honor to Bill Walton, all he's done for the game of basketball. He later went on to be commentator, be the color commentator for years and years, 20, 30, 40 years, up until just a few years ago when his health started to decline. If you watched a game during the 2000s, 2010s, it was often you would hear his voice. And so just honor his legacy as one of the greatest to ever play basketball, especially at the college level, but also an MVP in this league and a 2-time champion in this league.
Thanks for that, Dustin. I only have a couple of things to add. One, he was the first overall pick in 1974 from the Trailblazers. He won the last NBA championship for the Trailblazers. The Trailblazers haven't won a championship since he won in the 70s for them, and he won 2 championships, one with the Blazers and later in his career, I think his last season actually of his career,
second to last season with the Celtics, which
he was the 6th man of the year.
6th man of the year.
Yeah. So, yeah, and 2 more things. One, he was known for also being a very outspoken political activist, even at college. He was arrested and thrown into jail for protesting the Vietnam War while at UCLA. And so, there's a lot of people today, a lot of NBA, NFL players that take up political stances. Colin Kaepernick comes to mind, obviously, and a few other people like that are outspoken, but maybe not as extreme in some ways. Bill Walton was extreme in his political activism. He was very outspoken. He said he quoted to the press after his coach Wooden bailed him out of jail for being thrown in. He said, that was the worst day of my life. I didn't want to be bailed out of jail because it was important to me that I was in jail for what I believed in. And so, I mean, there were more. He's been outspoken about a lot of political issues. He was a very staunch liberal throughout his life, and that was one area, the Vietnam War, that he protested in college in particular. Lastly, I saved this for last because I've met Bill Walton 3 different times. When I was working at BYU, I was I was working in the press box, and he did a lot of Pac-12 games. He did a lot of BYU games. Actually, he came to the BYU Marriott Center several times to commentate on the games, and so I shook his hand once, and boy, that guy's tall. I'll tell you that. He's about 6'11". He shook all the reporters' hands there, just kind of saying, "I'm glad you're doing what you're doing." And he said it's important that you're that you're learning about journalism and things like that. He says, "I wish you all the best." That's what he said to our whole group. He went down our whole area and shook all of our hands and said, "I'm glad you guys are here." And even at that time, he could barely walk. He had such bad back issues throughout his career. He was not walking well. He had to use tables to walk and everything like that. But yeah, when I went to the NCAA tournament in 2013, I think, over in Dayton, Ohio. The first 4, Bill Walton was commentating in that game as well, and so it was fun to see him doing all those things and being in the same room as an NBA legend and having him shake all of our hands and congratulate us for doing the work that we were doing. So
cool story.
One thing I saw when I was looking up the tribute for Bill Walton is his coach. This specifically rang out to me. His coach said, Bill Walton is the best player, the best competitor, and the best person I've ever coached. And I thought that was really cool and a thing that I wanted to mention and say out there as my part for before we moved on. And I thought that was really cool, Scott, that you got to meet him. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't have anything much to add other than the first name that comes to my mind as a comparison is John Madden. Someone who, although they're different in that one was a coach, one was a player, they both changed their game, and they both ended up being commentators, legends in their game. And so, gotta realize the kind of legend that Bill Walton really is, what he did for the game, how he changed it, and to your point, Scott, what he did for outside of the game, how he changed just communities in general. And so, just a good man and needs to be honored.
Yep.
It's a quick something. So his son, Luke Walton, played all the NBA and also won a couple of championships with the Lakers, 2009, 2010. And I believe that they became the first father-son duo to ever both win a championship.
I think to win multiple championships
championships.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about current basketball. I'm going to reshare my screen here. Let me know if you see Pacers Celtics here. Okay. So this was a quick series. Gotta call out Yancey. I mean, Yancey didn't even think it was going to be a sweep, but he was the closest one to it. This was, I mean, in a second we have to talk about the Celtics' path to the NBA Finals, but this was never really a series. I mean, game 3 and 4 were both 3-point wins. And those were the two games that they didn't have Tyrese Halliburton. How about that? The Pacers were down their best player, but they won pretty easily in game 2 at least. Game 1 was that overtime win that they had, but it just, the Pacers, I think, got beat in that game 1 where they should have won, and it may have impacted everything that happened afterward, their psyche and everything else. But I want to talk about the Celtics in a second, but let's move on to analysis of the series.
Yeah, Scott, you said something like, it wasn't even a series. It was in game 1 and game 3 specifically, it was about 20 seconds away from being a really good series, because in game 1, with like 20 seconds left, the Pacers had a 95% chance to win. Mm-hmm. And in game 3, it was like with 45 seconds left, they had a 90% chance to win. It was Pacers should have won both game 1 and game 3, and the Celtics just were able to grind down, get together, and come back and hit some amazing shots, especially that game 1 Jaylen Brown 3 that sent it to overtime. And then in game 3, I think that there was like a late turnover that they're able to send it over, get a live ball turnover to score and win the game there. And so incredible push by the Celtics to win those games, because this could have been at the very least Celtics in 6 instead of Celtics in 4.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dustin. And I think overall the only thing I saw was just the Celtics are overpowered for the East, and we just got to see what happens to them when they face a team from the West. That's it. That's my only question.
I don't think I have any more to add.
Yeah, I want to go back to what Yancey just said. The Celtics' path to the NBA Finals was almost laughably easy. They had to beat a Miami Heat team without Jimmy Butler. Then they had to beat a Cleveland Cavaliers team that didn't have Donovan Mitchell or Jarrett Allen in the final 2 games of the series. And then they had to beat the Indiana Pacers that didn't have Tyrese Halliburton in the final 2 games of the series. So, I mean, obviously you can say a lot about the Celtics being 12-2 in the playoffs right now. They've only lost 2 games, but they've been fortunate to face teams that have been down their stars in all 3 series.
It's only because Jimmy Butler wasn't starting.
That's the only reason. Yes,
that's the only reason.
No, but I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the other series in just a second here, but history is certainly on the side of the Mavericks. But it doesn't matter whether they play the Mavericks or the Timberwolves. They're going to play a team that is at full strength. And yes, the Celtics were the best team in the league, but they also had to play in the Eastern Conference, where it's a little easier to win those games. And now they're going to play in the Western Conference, and it doesn't matter whether they play the Timberwolves or the Mavericks. Either one is better than any of the teams they've beaten these playoffs. So,
yeah, luck is such a huge part of sports, and bad luck especially. Bad luck with injuries really went to the Celtics' favor. That every team they had, their star player was out for multiple games or even the whole series, and the other teams really struggled to work without him. And so it's bad luck for the other teams, good luck for the Celtics, I suppose. And it'll be interesting to see how they adjust. And the Celtics have, almost a week and a half of rest to get Porzingis back and to fully rest up in order to play a team that may not be just as well rested.
Has anyone considered that maybe the Celtics hired Tanya Harding? I'm just saying. Nobody's saying it. I'm saying it now.
that's funny. Okay. Anything else on this series? Okay.
Nah.
Oops, I need to. Okay. Mavericks and Timberwolves. It looked like this one was headed for a sweep as well. The Mavericks won the first 3 games, but Timberwolves won last night to extend the series and send it back to Minnesota. And you can see all the games have been very close. Even game 3, it was just it says 9 points, but the Timberwolves were leading with about 2 minutes to go in that game, and the Mavericks just exploded down the stretch to win that game. So all of these games have been close. It could have gone either way in any of the games. So you think obviously history is on the side of the Mavericks. No team has ever won 4 straight after losing the first 3 games of a series. So they would have to make literal history for the Timberwolves to win the series. But
they did it against the Nuggets.
Who did
they
what
made
against
history? They overcame the largest deficit in game 7 history to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. It goes back to Minneapolis, so maybe Timberwolves can win the game on their home floor, and then it becomes a 2-game series at that point, and one of which is at home, and so the Celtics almost did it last year. They were down 3-0 against the Heat and took it to Game 7 before losing. So, I mean, it's not impossible, but so far the history says it has been. So, what do you guys think about this series?
Yeah, I have been super impressed with the Mavericks on multiple fronts. Their big play, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, has been absolutely fantastic. Watching this game, kind of trash talking on the side of the Mavericks, it's like you could tell Rudy Gobert, it's like you need to return that trophy. That trophy you just won, you need to send it back because you don't deserve it. He has not played very good defense at all this entire series. He has let so many dunks go, and the Mavericks have just completely taken advantage of Gobert's weakness at defense in this series, and it's so interesting. And so, and then just Kyrie and Luka have been playing out of their minds, hitting shots at the right time in the right setting in order to win those 3 games because they're all close, but Luka and Kyrie just put them over the edge in all 3 of those games. And then game 4, the Timberwolves had to fight so hard. I've been saying for a while that I think Karl Anthony Towns is very overrated, and I think that's been showing in this series that he's been a liability on defense. His shot has not been there, and he's been trying too hard to score. And then they've been playing too much one-on-one ball. Anthony Edwards saying, "Okay, we need to score. Give it to Jesus over there and have him do something." And it's just been too hard. It's been too hard for him to be able to get it going to try to carry this team. And so unless they have a significant strategy change, this game ends tomorrow night. The series ends tomorrow night.
Yeah. I think it was game 2 that Luka hit the game-winning shot over Rudy, the 3-point shot, and then turns around and yells at Rudy Gobert. And you don't even have to read lips to see what he said. He yelled at Rudy and said, "You can't fucking guard me." And then they asked him after the game and in the post said, "You said that, right?" I said, "No, I spoke in Slovenian."
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, yeah, this was we'll see what happens in Game 5 tomorrow night. Anyone, Yancey, Cody, about the series?
It ain't going the way I thought.
Yeah, I expected a lot more out of the Wolves. I hope that they can do it, but I don't think they will. I think I agree with Dustin that it's probably likely over tomorrow night.
Yeah. All the credit to Jason Kidd. He's designed a fantastic game plan to neutralize the defense. And they're not only is he still getting lots of bigs playing at the rim, getting lots of dunks, doing that, but also been able to drag Gobert out of the paint in order to allow that to happen and to make the bigs on defense a liability instead of an asset. And so fantastic strategy from Jason Kidd. And Chris Finch and Mike Nori have been really struggling to try to combat that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay. Next part of our agenda is just the next tab over, but you can't see because I have to stop sharing and reshare. The Stanley Cup playoffs check-in. We are in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals over here in hockey as well. The Stars beat the Avalanche in 6 games, while the Oilers beat the Canucks in 7. And so far, the Stars have a 2-1 series lead over the team from Calgary. On the other side, the Florida Panthers beat the Bruins in 6. The Rangers beat the Carolina Hurricanes in 6. And so far, that series is tied up 2-2 between Florida and New York. It's gone pretty close to what people predicted, a 1 versus a 1 in the Stanley Cup. Looks like it could be a Dallas versus Florida Stanley Cup Finals. That would be, like I said, go chalk 1 versus 1 there. But the Rangers have had something to say about that. It's tied up 2-2 over there. So, any thoughts about NHL playoffs?
I always thought Canuck was something you called a Canadian that you were mad at, but I don't know. Sorry.
I don't know
That's
what
all
that
I
word means, to tell you the truth. So I think it's some kind of, I don't know, is it fish? Like a nut, I think. I don't know. So anything, Dustin or Cody, about Stanley Cup playoffs?
It sounds like I'm just saying what you just said anyway. So no.
Okay.
No,
All right.
that-
So we're moving right along. So I'm going to stop sharing. We have 2 more topics to cover. One is about the release of a video game that's been a long time coming. This is the NCAA Football 25. The last NCAA football game, which I have right over here, actually, is NCAA 14. So it's been 9 years, and that was only on Xbox 360, which is now the consoles in the garage. And so I've tried to play that a few times, and it's just not the same. It's not the same kind of gameplay as the new versions of Madden. It seems like you're playing a computer game compared to the new graphics and new things, and so it wasn't as fun anymore. So I haven't played it in a long time. But finally, with the rights to use player names and the whole NIL stuff, we have a video game coming down the pipeline. So we can talk about some of the features, but let's hand it over to you guys to talk about this game.
I'm really excited for it. I've been waiting for this game to come back. I've always liked it more than Madden, to be honest. Madden's fun, but I always had a lot more fun with college football. I'm not sure if I can explain why. I think it's just more exciting for me. And then having actually having the players in there is also going to be kind of fun and exciting. Just better graphics. Everything I look forward to really will be really cool. Going to off of what you were just talking about, Scott, I think the last time I played that game was on a PS2. So so it's been a minute for that. But I enjoyed that. I think that the cover wasn't that Tim. No, it was it was a Boise Broncos someone, right?
It was the Michigan guy, Michigan quarterback. What's his name?
Bernard Robinson.
Bernard Robinson. Thank you. Yes.
Oh, interesting. I thought
Yeah.
that was
Bust.
14.
That dude was a huge bust in the NFL.
Yes,
Did
he
he even
was.
go to the NFL?
He played running back and kick returner for the Jaguars for 2 years, and then he was gone.
Bust. I'll say it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
The cover curse exists.
Yeah. So, some of the features that are going to be available there for that game, they're going to have some of the same gameplay modes, like the Dynasty that you can do. They'll have let's see. Sorry, I was reading about this. Unless you guys want to jump in, but the Dynasty mode, the Road to Glory mode, which is always there as well, about taking a player and taking him through the however many years that you do. And I don't know what they'll be, if there'll be that jump that you used to be able to do from NCAA to Madden, take your player, get it drafted in Madden. I don't know if that will exist anymore, but that was pretty cool too. I did that a few times. There is an Ultimate
They can
Team.
pay for it.
Yeah. There's a one called the Road to the College Football Playoff. I'm not sure what that is yet, but and then there's online play. Although I think it's limited to what modes you can play. You can play like player versus player and an ultimate team. I think are the two that you can play, player versus player. You can't do a dynasty together, which is annoying. But maybe there's some online dynasties. But so.
I think the only thing I want to add as far as features wise is much like in Madden, you have the ability to be as like an owner. You can do your own merchandise, stadium, things like that. You can do that as well in this game, but also you can do a management of NIL money. They're actually creating NIL. I don't know how to talk, just management, I guess, as well as a portal, transfer portal, and NIL will be a part of this game as well, which obviously was not, a decade ago.
Are you able to launder and bribe that away, or is that only certain teams?
Oh, Dustin, calm down. Florida, sorry.
It's certain teams only.
Woo, that was fire. Shout out to Dustin working on his type 5 on the podcast.
So yeah, it'll be fun for those of us who still are playing Xbox One. It won't be available on that platform. So for Dustin and I, at least, I don't know about Cody, we're gonna have to go switch over to the Xbox Series S to play that. So
or X, drop
play
the extra $200, get that terabyte.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Anything else about that game?
I think it's good that it's back. I think it's cool they're releasing multiple different covers to feature multiple different players. I'm very pro NIL and players getting paid for everything that they do, and so I'm glad that they figured out a way to do that. And I think it's funny that the NCAA backed away from it. They're like, no, we don't want to pay them, and so they're not on the cover. It's not just called college football.
All right. Last segment, we have almost half an hour to run through some PTI questions here. Cody sent 3 of them to us beforehand. There's some that I think are going to be quite controversial, or not controversial. That's not a good word, but debatable, argumentative. But so we'll see. Cody, moderate us.
All right. Well, let's start with the first one. We'll see if these 3 can last 30 minutes or we can come up with more other ones. But the first one I thought of, let's talk about Russell Wilson for a moment. Russell Wilson will go down as a Hall of Famer just because of his Seattle days. He's a Super Bowl winner. He is a 9-time Pro Bowler. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but he has I should look them up. It's way over 100 touchdowns, obviously, against just not nearly as many interceptions, at least in Seattle. I think really just basing off of the one Super Bowl win, the amount of playoff wins, Pro Bowl trips as well, is enough to get him to Hall of Fame just from Seattle. It's not just a Ring of Honor. That's the first topic I want to say, and that's my stance.
So it's interesting to take, I don't 100% disagree, but I disagree just a little bit, because that first Super Bowl was the Legion of Boom season, if I remember right. That offense did not get them to the Super Bowl. The defense did. And it was the defense that won the Super Bowl. I mean, didn't they? It was against the Broncos. Didn't they hold them to like 10 points or something ridiculous? And so that was a defense thing. Russell Wilson was a great quarterback in Seattle, but it wasn't on his arm that first Super Bowl came from that. And so that's my counter to that. I think that a lot of his stats, and especially a lot of his popularity, will probably land him in the Hall of Fame. But to say that his talent helped lead this team to be a multi Super Bowl appearance team, it's ignoring some very important aspects of what was going on during that time.
Yeah.
I'm
For
only
me-
here so I don't
Go
get
ahead, Yancey.
fined.
That's Marshawn Lynch.
We
but-
forget Marshawn Lynch was on that team.
right? Yeah.
I'm only here because I don't get fined. Like, I think that you can't give a ton of credit to Russell Wilson without giving the same amount, if not more, credit to Marshawn Lynch. You can't play quarterback like that without an incredible running back or supporting cast. And in my opinion, Russell Wilson didn't have the numbers to support that kind of stuff with the supporting cast that he had, because there's plenty of other people that plenty of other quarterbacks that outperformed Russell Wilson, in my opinion, with less weapons around him.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl with Joseph Adai.
So I like what both of you said, Yancey and Dustin, both the aspects of that the Seahawks' great years were a number one defense that carried them through there. I mean, you can make comparisons to say Trent Dilfer was the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens when they won the Super Bowl, right? Does that mean he's a Hall of Famer?
I wasn't saying Trent Dilfer is as good as Russell, bro. Don't put that on me, bro.
You can't compare those two.
But
We
no,
are.
we are. That's what we're doing. I mean, if we're just saying
right.
that because he won one Super Bowl on a great defensive team, shouldn't Trent Dilfer be in the Hall of Fame too? I mean, if that's the only qualification, of course it's not. But this is a really hard one because, I mean, obviously he has 9 Pro Bowls, he's won a Super Bowl, but he only led the league in passing in 1 year with 34 touchdowns, I think, in 2017. He was never first team All-Pro. He never received a single MVP vote ever in his career. And so he's been one of the best quarterbacks out of his era. And so it's one of those things that I imagine he will get in, but he won't be a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. It'll take a couple of years. But also, I think his Denver days and maybe Pittsburgh this year are hurting his case because they're showing what Russell Wilson is without the defensive support he had, without Marshawn Lynch. At Denver, he was a horrible quarterback for a year. Last year, he was better than they said. His numbers were better than a lot of people said last year. But 2 years ago, he was awful in Denver. And who knows how he's going to be in Pittsburgh. So I think if he retired after his Seattle days, I think he'd get in easily. But these last 2 or 3 years are kind of hurting him. So, yeah.
I like that. That was a good one. Anything else?
No.
No.
Go to the
Okay.
second one. Yeah.
Number 2. So, scrolling through social media, I got some news about Caleb Williams. We all know who that is. Caleb Williams, this is according to Elite Gridiron, so take it as you will. But Caleb Williams was benched during their OTAs, which is I believe it's organized team activities. It's optional, but he was there and he was actually benched during their OTAs for playing terribly. He threw 7 consecutive interceptions during their 7-on-7s and did not complete a single pass during that time. And so he was benched for that. 7 consecutive interceptions is horrible and one of the worst things I've ever heard of. And this isn't 7-7. This isn't even with people like TJ Watt rushing him. He's not having anyone rushing him. He's just trying to get a pass out to Rome Odunze or something at this point with someone guarding him. And he got 7 consecutive interceptions. So being benched was definitely the right thing during that camp. This is just training. I get it. This is just training and their practice. This isn't real game. But if that's what this number 1 pick, the guy who's going to be the savior of the Bears franchise, if that's what he's doing during their 7-on-7s, I'd be really worried about their season coming up.
Let's go in the same order.
That me first.
Yeah.
I think Caleb Williams is right that they're not going to be punting very much.
And he's just loading them up.
I think that we've all agreed that Caleb Williams needs to develop a lot. But I also think that this is probably elite gridiron trying to get lots of views. We don't know the context of the practice situation. We don't know exactly what's going on. It's a optional thing. We don't understand all of the context. All we see is this header that says that from a newspaper or a magazine that's trying to make a name for itself. So not to say that it wasn't true, but we don't understand all of the context in a optional freestyle flowing type of game environment that may have been a no pressure kind of thing. And then he said, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go do this. So not saying that it wasn't that, but it could have been.
Yeah,
Yancey?
I think Dustin makes some really good points about how the context in this situation is super important. Because, I mean, that does sound a little egregious, right? Like I could go throw 7 interceptions right now. Like I could do that. And so it almost makes Caleb Williams relatable. And it might be a push from his PR team because we all think he's a flaming bag of dog poop. And so maybe this ingratiates him with people who aren't good at sports or something. I don't know. But I also get the sense that that's more for like, hey, look at what Caleb Williams did bad, than it is like an actual representation of how he may or may not play. I think he's going to play like crap because he thinks he's greater than he is. And anytime you're doing that, the Dunning-Kruger effect shows us that you're not actually that good. That's an awesome science joke, by the way. But I think he just sucks. And that's going to show when we see him having to participate in the sport at the level that he thinks he's at, as opposed to the level that he's really at.
For me,
a good college player versus an NFL player.
Yeah. I like what Dustin said, and I'll add to that a little bit. Caleb Williams got benched. You really think he's not going to start game 1 of the NFL season? Like, he didn't get benched. That's called, I mean, in the industry that I used to work in, that's called a gotcha headline. You open it up and you read it, and if it's good news, then it's not about him getting benched. It's about him being sat down by the coach and saying, figure yourself out. And, today didn't work out. Tomorrow's going to be fine. He didn't get benched. It was about, okay, it didn't work out today. Sit down, go watch some film, come back tomorrow. So it's not about being benched. You're a first pick quarterback. You're starting game 1. Yeah, unless you're injured, but and so it is a little bit more of a gotcha journalism kind of a thing, and I think a lot of that is about throwing 7 interceptions in a row. I mean, sure, if that's exactly the way it went down, that looks bad, but you're also playing against a pretty good, I mean, better than USC defense, I'll tell you that. And so playing against a good Chicago Bears defense that has all their starters and are making him learn. And I read that Kevin Byard, the Bears safety, took him aside or was it Kevin Byard? No, a Bear safety. Took him aside after that practice and really talked to him, and I think that's great leadership from a guy that understands. Hey, my quarterback is going to be struggling because he's a rookie and he thinks he's hot stuff. But I got to take him aside and I got to say, this is the NFL. You're going to have bad games. They're not all going to be roses, but what you got to do is believe in your teammates and believe in yourself, and you can be okay. It's a great leadership move by a veteran safety to take him aside and say, you had a bad day. We all have bad days. Come back. So.
All right, the last one that I have, and then if there's others that we guys want to talk about, we can. This one I think is going to be the most fun and possible most controversial one as well. So there is, and I can't give you guys a name specific, but there's something kind of going around between NBA players, NFL players about who could transition into what sport better or easier with more success. Basically, what was that?
Austin Rivers, former NBA player.
Okay. So the argument is that NBA players could transition, just go into NFL and play along with everyone else and do fine, and that NFL players could not do the same. When some NFL players are saying vice versa. So my stance is that NFL players can transition into the NBA better than NBA players could transition into the NFL. Now let me explain.
Of course, that's your stance.
What's that?
Of course, that's your stance.
Of course it is, right?
I was going to say, who wants to disagree first? Dustin?
So let's take an example, and I'll be honest. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit. Okay, so we have Wemby out here on the field, right? We have Wemby who's going up against a middle linebacker, right? So he's going up against middle linebacker. He's going to the hospital day one, right? He's going to the hospital day one with that hit. The first players I think of in the NBA who could probably handle it is probably Luka Doncic and Jokic. Am I saying his name right? Jokic. A couple of the bigger bodied guys. Both could have a lot of stamina. I get that part. The NBA players have to have more endurance because they run up and down the court a lot more than NFL players are doing. But I think that the actual physicality of the sport, it would be harder on an NBA player to have to deal with for an entire 60 minutes of the game versus NFL going to the NBA, being able to deal with lighter contact. They can deal with that pretty well. And one reason, and this is, of course, biased, as everyone knows, DK Metcalf does really well in basketball. Okay. There's been he was doing I don't forget what it was, some kind of event for fundraising or something like that, where he's playing basketball, does really well, 20, 25 points a game or something like that. It's just an example. So that's my stance. I'm ready to hear the heat. Bring it for me.
Yeah. So
same order. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cody, I think the one thing that you're right about is that they're different sports and they require different body types. And the average NFL player is going to carry a lot more dense muscle, a lot more fat on them in order to protect them from those hits. And kind of a natural padding there. Whereas an NBA player is all muscle. They are pure muscle. They're extremely lean. So if you take someone, I'm going to say Giannis Antetokounmpo, 6'11", 250 pounds, and you put him in an NFL training camp for a little while, get him up, he's going to still be 6'11", but he's going to be 310 pounds, and he's still going to run a 4.40. This man will eat quarterbacks for breakfast. I mean, no chance. And then I'm thinking of another great athlete in the NFL. What's his name? The Cleveland Browns edge rusher.
Garrett?
Yeah. You put him in the NBA again, allow his body to change. That guy's small. He's only 6'6". He's going to trim down maybe 6'6", 230, 240. Small, tiny. I mean, the physical gifts that basketball players have, they are absolute freaks of nature. Absolute freaks. The most physically talented people play basketball because they have God-given ability. Their hands are huge. They have wingspan that are 6 to 10 inches longer than their height. And then the speed in there, they are absolute athletes that are freaks of nature. And if you put them in any other sport, that freaks of nature is going to come out even more, and they're going to dominate.
So yes and no with Dustin. I think that's a great overall assessment. I do not agree that NFL players can just up and transition and play in the NBA, except for, skill positions. You give me wide receivers, running backs, the ones the white guys don't play. And they're going to transition pretty well I think most of the way across the board because of the athleticism and the size required for the NBA. But even then, like Dustin's talking about, the upper echelon of those guys are point guards. Like the biggest dudes are going to be point guards, small point guards. And Randy Moss comes to mind. He was really good. He's like 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", if that. 6'4". So that's like an inch taller than me. And I played football, but I'm not that good at basketball because of the finesse and stuff required with this is different than creating a car wreck with your body. The type of athleticism is just different. In football, to be good at football, you have to be reckless, not concerned with injuring yourself, and have the ability to throw your body at high velocity at another person in either direction, north or south, on offense or defense, and you're great at it if you can hold on to a ball on offense. And in the NBA, you have to be good at 6 or 7 things to even be considered. So I have to agree with Dustin that the talent level is extremely different. But I do want to say that if you put Wemby on the field, I'm going to break him in half, dog. I don't care if you are 7'5". I'm going to grab one of your legs that isn't 7'5", and I'm going to bend it at the knee until I hear something go, and then that's the end of it. And I'm not dealing with you no more. Problem solved. You're not Ray Lewis. And so I think in football, I played football with a guy named Jordan Myers, and he was 6'7", and he said, this is my last time. I'm not playing football anymore after this because I need to save my knees so I can play basketball and go to college for free. And those guys know that super young that this sport is bad for the stuff that's good in other sports. And so, I mean, football player, we're the garbage men of sports. It is what it is.
Yeah, Cody, it's a clean sweep against you here. Let me give you a couple of things. First of all, Wemby is not going across the middle. I'm sitting Wemby on the bench until we're in the red zone, and then I'm putting him at a slot at an exterior wide receiver, and I'm throwing it up for him to go catch it because I don't care who's defending him. The tallest cornerback in the NFL might be 6'4". If you're a foot taller, just throw it up for Wemby to go get it. And the only thing you can do is do pass interference and tackle him and break him in half. But in that case, you get first and goal at the 1. But so that's one thing I'm thinking of. Another, I liked what Yancey said about each position group in the NFL has a job, right? As an offensive lineman, your job is to hit the guys in front of you and make way for your running back or to protect your quarterback. That's your entire job. You're not going to get the ball. You're not going to run down the field. That's your entire job. And the same thing for wide receivers. Their only job is to go catch the ball. Sometimes they block for their running backs. Sometimes you play on special teams and you have a little bit more. But in the NBA, everyone does everything. There's no position group in the NBA. You have to be good at everything in the NBA to succeed. That's not the case in the NFL. I mean, Peyton Manning, you want to see him play wide receiver?
You got 7 minutes to watch a 40?
I mean, it's different body types, it's different skill sets. But in the NBA, to be a good NBA player, you do everything well, and that translates uh, to to what this would look like in if NBA players played in the NFL. Also, you can change your body type as much as you want. You can't a like
You can't
Miles
fake
Garrett.
7'3",
Yeah,
baby.
you can't fake being 7 feet tall. So if the tallest guy in in the NFL is what 6'9", 6'10", maybe. I mean, but that's a huge exception. Most guys are going to be 6'3" to 6'6", and that's a shooting guard to small forward. And everyone in the NBA is going to be 6 inches taller than you, no matter how good you are. And So I just think the NBA athletes are better positioned to excel in other athletic endeavors than NFL athletes can do.
I think I'll do one rebuttal. I have one rebuttal for across the board. Uh, the biggest and main. Let me first say there's several things you guys made good points, valid. But one of the biggest things I heard was the height difference. The height difference being what's needed, right? I'll give you two names: Steph Curry, Chris Paul, right? Two pretty short guys for basketball. Steph Curry is 6'5", 6'4", or something like
6'3".
something
He's
like
6'3".
6'3", even smaller than that. And Chris Paul was like
6 feet.
6'1" or something, right?
5'11".
Okay, something like that. Both going to be Hall of Famers. Absolutely amazing what they do. Position players in the NFL are very agile, very quick to adjust, very good at learning. Put them in camp, really, if you will, like for basketball. They're training in the off season. They're practicing. I bet that if you give them that whole off season to shoot balls, practice, running around the court, they can hold their own. They can hold their own. They can be shooting baskets. They can run up and get through there and shoot the layups. That they could do that. So I think you guys made valid points. If you guys were to try to change my position, it would really be that both could do it. It wouldn't be that basketball is more successful, better positioned, and that's because of those two players that as examples, Chris Paul and Steph Curry, and that as we know it, running backs, receivers, they're agile. They're quick, they're fast, and they can learn quickly and they can adjust quickly.
One thing I'll use to agree with you, but I'll put this caveat on. I could take any player in the NFL that made it to the NFL on their own merit in the skill positions like you were talking about, and get them to where an NBA player would need to be if they wanted to play in the NBA. And they've already shown that they could do that via getting into the NFL physically, but they didn't feel like playing basketball. Just like Michael Jordan felt like playing baseball, but he sucked at it. It's the same thing. Like if I laser focused on being an accountant, I could be an accountant next year. I don't want to be an accountant. It's laser focus on top of physical gifts like God-given talent and just physically being different than the people that are in your geographic region that get you up in there. Because like just physically compare the football player. They came from a market. You know what I mean? That's all a market. And they were just in the top percentile of those people taken from that market to go to this market. And you can train anybody that has those gifts, that is talented enough to play any sport you want them to play, but they'd have to have the natural desire to do it, to be good at it. Because Steph Curry and Chris Paul have been playing basketball their entire lives because they wanted to be good at it. And that's why they're able to succeed at the size that they are, as opposed to any other Joe that's 6'3" or 6'5". That's why that argument is a little like, okay, well, those two, but that's because they've been playing basketball their entire lives. How many other people of that size could even get to there? I think that's what we were trying to point out.
Yeah.
The last thing, sorry, I'll just say that the last thing that I want to point out is that it would be based in the NFL. I think it would be more based on position groups being able to succeed. I can't see an offensive lineman being able to play in the NBA. That size, I mean, suddenly you're 6'5", you're shooting guard's height, but you're 300 pounds. Obviously, you're going to slim down a little bit, but it's different in the NFL. You play for 15 seconds, and then you take a minute and a half break, and then you do it again. NBA is constant, back and forth, back and forth. You're running 7 miles, 8 miles by the end of the game. So
yeah, the endurance thing is a huge aspect. I don't think that you could take an NFL or an NBA player and put them in MLS, and they'd all be throwing up by the end. Throwing.
That's a good point.
They'd be
Yeah.
puking at the end because the endurance is such an aspect there. It takes, just like you started off with this, your body type has to change. One last thing I'll say is it's interesting. So potentially the greatest high school football player in the state of Ohio is named LeBron James. He was the greatest high school football player ever. I mean, he toured Ohio State. They wanted him to come play at Ohio State 2003. He might be the greatest high school football player in Ohio, Ohio school history, and of course went on to become the legend that he is. And so there have been several players that have played both, and some succeeded in one sport, some succeeded in the other.
well, thanks for taking us through that. We're right at time, so we're gonna finish, and we'll open up next week. We're talking NBA Finals next week, and so previewing that and making some predictions, probably offline, especially if the series ends tomorrow in Minnesota. So we'll talk about that and talk about a few other things. Thanks everyone, and happy birthday again, Dustin.
Thanks. Bye.
Happy birthday, buddy.